regardless of whatsoever task, it is vital to assign it to the right person. Many times we assign tasks to an individual or person who may not have the necessary competence to execute it in a deft manner. Also, there may be instances where we volunteer to take up tasks or assignments in which we have limited competence or do not have too much of knowledge, and we end up making a mess out of it. So it is understandable to be very clear on this fact that every task requires expertise, and it is on the basis of it that the necessary or the proper person needs to be identified and assigned this particular task. When it comes to assigning tasks to the right person, I recollect a story which I heard many years back. This story pertains to a gardener and five monkeys. Once upon a time, several centuries ago, there was a gardener who used to take care of a rose garden which belonged to the king of that particular land. It was an extensive rose garden dotted with beautiful rose flowers, rose plants bearing exotic rose flowers of various colors. Within the rose garden, there were also a few fruit trees. So the gardener used to spend his whole day taking care of that particular rose garden. Also, understand that this was a time when there were no taps or pipes. So there was a well within the rose garden from which water had to be drawn and poured on these rose plants twice a day so as to provide nourishment and growth to these particular plants. Within the fruit trees, there used to be five monkeys. So these monkeys were relatively harmless, and over a period of time, these monkeys developed a good bond with the gardener. The gardener learned how to communicate with these monkeys, and they used to interact with one another, and things were going pretty fine. One day, a messenger came from the gardener's village and informed that his father has been unwell, and his father wished to see him and requested in case he could go back and visit his father at his village at the earliest. Now, the gardener was sad on hearing information about his father's ill health. However, there was no way that he could leave the rose garden and go to his village, because in case he decided to go, then who would take care of the rose garden? So he sat in one corner of the rose garden, sad and worrying about his father. That's when, out of the five monkeys, the leader of these five monkeys, a monkey who was good in nature and who considered himself to be very clever, the reality is the monkey was not as clever as he thought that he was. And this particular monkey came to the gardener and asked him as to what the problem was. And that's when the gardener mentioned that his father was unwell and he needed to go to his village. And in his absence, there may be no one to take care of the rose garden. And because of that, he is in two minds. And that's when the monkey told him that, please do not worry, you go and visit your father. In the interim, me and my four friends, we would take care of the rose garden. We would water the plants, we would draw water from the well and have the needful done until the time that you're back. So hearing this, the gardener was happy. He decided to trust his friends, the five monkeys, and leave the rose garden to be managed by them until the time he is back. So he left for his village, and the five monkeys took charge of taking care of the rose garden. So after some time, the monkeys decided that it's now time to water the rose plants. So they started drawing water from the well and started pouring on the rose plants. And that's when one smart monkey had this particular thought that all the rose plants are of similar size. Now, how do we measure how much water is to be poured on each rose plant. And it's going to be difficult because it's standard, or most rose plants are of the same size. That's when this question was posed to the leader of the monkeys, who considered himself to be very smart and clever, which unfortunately he was not. He pondered for some time and said, yes, it's a very valid question. Now, how do we measure how much water is to be poured on each plant? So he instructed the other monkeys that what we need to do is we need to pluck out each rose plant from the soil, place it on the ground, and check what is the length and breadth of the roots of each rose plant. And on the basis of the roots, we can measure and put water accordingly, because the roots may be of different sizes, and depending on the size, water would be poured. And that's what the monkeys ended up doing. They uprooted all the rose plants, placed it horizontally on the ground, and poured water on it. And that was what they did twice a day until the time the gardener came back. The monkeys were not that intelligent to realize what is going on, and they kept watering the plants. Unfortunately, the plants started withering away. So did the leaves as well as the flowers. And by the time the gardener came back from the village, he saw what a mess the entire rose garden had become. He saw the rose plants strewn on the ground, all uprooted and withering away. He was heartbroken, and he asked the leader of the monkeys what the situation was, or what transpired. And the leader of the monkeys told this entire logic, and that's when the gardener almost fainted. And he started cursing himself as to why did he entrust the rose garden to these monkeys. And that's when he realized his folly. He realized that regardless of whatever the relationship or bond that he has with these monkeys, the fact is they are not gardeners. They possibly have only seen him watering the plants, but they don't have the competence or expertise. So it is actually his fault of having trusted these monkeys and given them a task in which they had no knowledge. And that was his biggest learning. So for all of us, there is this particular learning from the story of the gardener and the 5 monkeys. Just like the uprooted rose plants, which was a situation which could have been avoided. In the same way, we have to be very cautious and cognizant while identifying the right person to take up a certain task. Never give a task to someone based on your good rapport. Rather, understand whether the person has the ability to execute the task and live up to your expectations. In the same way, when it comes to taking up tasks, you will need to understand and analyze whether you have the strengths and ability to manage the task effectively. In case not, please don't take it. Otherwise, the outcome would be same in terms of analogy as the rose garden and what the monkeys did to those rose plants. So ponder upon this and always understand the fact that expertise is required for any task, and it's always good to entrust any task to the right person or an expert. Thank you very much for your time.